Yeah, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Relai Bitcoin Session. Today again with a very, very special guest, actually our chairman here at Relai, Alexis Roussel, who is a very, very experienced lawyer and entrepreneur in the Bitcoin and crypto finance space. So I'm very, very happy to have you here in the office today one more time. And yeah, maybe introduce yourself a little bit. What have you done for Bitcoin so far?
Well, thank you for having me here. I think it's great. I think your experience and your project is great, and I'm really proud to be part of it and being the chairman of Relay. I hope I can bring everything, all my knowledge to you, and so that we create something like really nice. And I'm convinced that the project is really nice. So. I've been in Bitcoin since 2013, and I created in 2013 with a couple of other co-founders, Jean and Yves. We created Bitty, and I was able to get the very first license as a financial intermediary in June 2014. And from there we grew, and we participated in the Bitcoin community of Switzerland, and we had a lot of experience. We set up a Bitcoin ATM network, and we have a online exchange services to exchange Bitcoin and Ether for Euro and Swiss franc. And what we try to focus is we try to keep as close as the Bitcoin spirit, and basically to do everything without custody of the funds, and with as less as possible KYC as possible, using all the framework of the law. So we stay inside the law, but we use the right method. And I think this is helping people to get out of Bitcoin easily and use Bitcoin in an environment which is safe in Switzerland. I think that's a bit my objective, is to make sure that we don't fall into a hyper regulation by our own fault, because it's not just the regulator, it's the people who start in crypto business. They try to fall into too much regulation, and we try to keep the balance there.
Yeah, and that's, I think, why we are such a good match, and also why Relay and Bitty are partners, because we're actually on the same on the same way. We try to give it at least KYC, the burden to have as low as possible to get into Bitcoin for everybody. So I think that's why we also met. And that's very interesting. So you got into Bitcoin 2013, and you also started your Bitcoin company in 2013. So you in a very small time frame, you decided to dedicate most or even all of your professional energy and time into Bitcoin. Why was that? Why did you decide to dedicate so much so fast into Bitcoin?
So I knew Bitcoin before. Okay, I knew about it since very early. I took it as it was presented. It was an experiment. Don't put your money in there if you don't think it's an experiment worth trying. So I was like, okay. And but then I was using Bitcoin as an example of tools and future tools of how the society will work with those kind of tools, the decentralized tools based on consensus, open source systems. And Bitcoin was the example for money and for trust. And then in 2013, I met Jean, one of the co-founder with me of Bitty, and he asked me, Alexis, can you please explain me what Bitcoin is? And I said, yeah, no problem, I can explain to you. And it was very special, because when I explained Bitcoin to him at that time in 2013, while I was already knowing Bitcoin and not using, but explaining Bitcoin, I finally understood Bitcoin then. Explaining to him, and I discovered I really realized the fundamental impact of Bitcoin in society, and that there was no question that this is where we should be professionally or anything for any kind of development that in the society that we're going to do, it was with Bitcoin. And so then moving from there to making a company, it was Jean, who was also an entrepreneur at the time, and he said, yeah, let's do something. Yeah, immediately that was gone, and we were into it.
Crazy. And how was it to build one of the first Bitcoin and Bitcoin or crypto finance startups in Switzerland, and probably one of the first in Europe anyway? How was that to be like such a pioneer when only like 100, 200 people probably were actually interested in this topic?
I mean, we were not the completely, we were not the only ones. There was at least 4 or 5 competing projects already at that time. I mean, the most known is Bitcoin Suisse, which still now thrives and is a much larger company. But there were some few others, which today have completely disappeared. So basically out of the projects which came out in 2013, we can say that there's only those 2 left. Then there's some other who came after. I think what was the hardest part was that the market was very small still at that time, and we were completely in an isolated bubble because most of the rest of the industry around us, they didn't work with us, you know. It was very hard to have a banking relationship, so we managed. That was one of my successes. I was able to keep a banking relationship through all the years of Bitty, but still it was hard. Having insurances was hard. Even recruiting some people was hard because they were saying, why would I go work for a business of a product that I don't even understand? I mean, there was like a lot of questions from the society, and so we were put by the others in a certain kind of bubble, and I had to break that bubble, and that's why in Neuchâtel, where we built the whole community, we managed to break that bubble and work with the lawyers, work with the bank, with the state, with the tax department, and so on, and we with the fiduciaries, you know. So and now we are at the point where in Neuchâtel at least, and in Zurich it's a bit the same too. When you want to make a Bitcoin project, a Bitcoin company, then suddenly you have people in the economy which you can talk with and do business with. That was not the case at the beginning.
But then from a lot of it comes down to legal reasons, obviously, as well, because you spend a lot of time in educating and you know, work with yes, banks, but also legal bodies and licenses providers and FINMA and so forth. So from a lawyer's perspective, what were at that time, what are now, and what will be in the future the main legal challenges so that Bitcoin can thrive further?
Yeah. So the first challenge that came out was the question of what is Bitcoin, the qualification of Bitcoin. And that's really important because if you don't qualify something, you don't know how to handle it. And if you qualify badly something, it can have bad consequences. For example, very early in 2014, I think, in Sweden, they decided that Bitcoin was a commodity. And if there is a commodity, then you should pay VAT on buying Bitcoin. And you don't pay VAT on buying euros, you know, but they had to pay VAT and 20% VAT on Bitcoin, and that doesn't make sense, you know. So by misqualifying Bitcoin as a commodity, like a physical product,
or like gold, for example.
No, not even like gold. Not like something that you build, a product that, like a phone, you know, that you with added value that you build. If you misqualify this, then you apply bad rules behind, or rules that don't make sense. If I'm building a phone and I sell the phone, there is added value in the phone, and there's a tax for that. That's normal, or some people consider that normal, but not for money. So that was the first challenge. And what was interesting in Switzerland is that that was the first thing that the Federal Council did, and it was unique in the world. Switzerland was unique in the world that they just qualified Bitcoin as an asset, and as an asset that could be used as money. And then from there, it was already fixed. I mean, the way the tax department could kick in, all the other rules were naturally applied to Bitcoin. That was the challenge at the time, and today we still see it goes more into details because there's a lot of other assets, all these different tokens, and they have to qualify those tokens, and there's some challenge because so there's two main challenges. One challenge which is happening now is the challenge of regulation in general, where because Bitcoin and the crypto economy is bringing so much disruption, not just disruption in the reality of the market because it's still small, but it's getting bigger. It's significant now, at least. It's not well understood by people from the traditional finance because they were not educated. They didn't have schools where you were teaching Bitcoin and things like this. So they don't know how it works. They think it has a value of 0. They don't understand where the value comes from. And so what they try to do, they try to make up rules because they're a bit afraid and they don't know how it works. They don't know the dynamics, and they create rules which don't make sense. Mm-hmm. Or they apply rule in a way that completely don't make sense. So that's the current challenge that we see, even in Switzerland. Luckily, in Switzerland, we can confront the regulator. Every time they make a new proposition, we can tell them, no, that's wrong. Don't, it means this. Technically, it means this, and you should do it like this. And they take it into account sometimes what we say. In the future, the challenge is that it's the challenge of all the peer-to-peer economies. Is that the peer-to-peer system is that in the digital age, peer-to-peer systems are replacing centralized system. That's what we see happening. It happens for culture with music and films. Now it happens with movies, with money, Bitcoin against the old system. And when you change those structure, then suddenly all the individuals within the system have the same power. And the same way as you had before, if you want to make your own newspaper, it was a lot of investment, a lot of people, a printing press, a building. And suddenly you have one teenage guy in the middle of nowhere around the planet who can publish a blog and have millions of readers. Okay, mm-hmm. So he has a way of publishing news in a much powerful way. But are you going to impose to this person the same regulations as a huge newspaper? No, you don't do that. If you are an individual who has access to the Bitcoin network, you can create services on your own which have the same power and can have the same impact as the biggest bank in the world. Mm-hmm. Should you cut yourself for having an audit on yourself and things like this? So the challenge is that the regulation will be pushed to the end points of the network, and more people will be touched by regulations. And if we do this, if the government do that, then these people will not accept to abide to those regulations. They will go into places where there's no possible way of enforcing those regulations. So the whole financial system, all the rules about the financial systems will have either to be partially dropped or be rethought, because you cannot impose banking license to every family who's managing their own money, for example. Mm-hmm. It's a bit extreme what I'm saying, but there is some kind of it pushes into this direction. Mm-hmm.
So regulators will also have to understand that they now have less control over this whole monetary over all these monetary flows, because now people are more in control of their money, and not everything needs to be managed by a bank or by regulators. And that's interesting. So what's in this regard, you talked about these libertarian thoughts, less power to the government, and maybe but also about these peer-to-peer, so more power to the user. What's the big vision for you regarding Bitcoin? Like, if you saw it, like how it was 10 years ago, and now you saw it develop, maybe what do you think is, in the next 10 to 20 years, what's going to happen with this thing?
So for me, Bitcoin has so many things that with it, it's so strong. Bitcoin, first, it represents everything which it is built on. So and when someone understands partially Bitcoin, because no one understands Bitcoin as a whole, no one, it's impossible. But if you grasp something from Bitcoin, it will be linked to one of the things that makes up Bitcoin. It will be linked either to cryptography and the power of cryptography, which is totally underestimated by the people, and also the science behind that, which is incredible. The power of peer-to-peer networks, the power of consensus mechanism, the power of protocols, and the power of open source, and the power of communities. And all of this have been completely have built are building our digital society. You find the same thing in internet, in a lot of things that we are using already right now, but they are totally undervalued, and so all these things will, thanks to and then actually a lot of these things have been fought by the governments. So cryptography is used by pedophiles to hide their communication. It's bad. We need backdoors. Peer-to-peer network is being used for file sharing and trying to destroy the music industry. So we need to destroy them, and so on. There's an open source is bad because it's I don't know why it's bad, but it doesn't give money to big corporations. Somehow it's bad, because it doesn't work with the patent and copyright and everything. So in the framework, exactly. So and actually, we're taking all these bad things from the digital society. We create something which has the biggest and strongest value in it, and we use it as money and as programmable money. So when Bitcoin, naturally we see Bitcoin is being pushed, and all these things behind are being pushed also, and that's great. And the other thing which is also super important is that, and that's about cryptography, but basically Bitcoin, it's the first functional money, electronic money, which is based on signature. So you sign. You are expressing your will every time you send money. It's your signature which is being used, and it's a very powerful thing. You're used to sign documents, but you sign contracts. You sign things which are important. When you get married, you will sign, and you will have witnesses because it's a very important thing to be married. You sign contracts, and we're going to move into a society where people will be engaging themselves into the digital economy by signing things and signing payment instructions in Bitcoin, and then we're going to move away. I hope we're going to move, or we have the option to move away from an economy which is based on being completely dependent of identity provider. If you don't have an account with Google, you're no one, because you cannot use certain types of services. No, I'm a free person. I have the right of signature. I can send a Bitcoin transaction, and I can encrypt my document, and I can engage myself in the economy.
And I can basically make any transaction I want without needing any third party for it.
Exactly.
Do whatever
it's really
on this
my power,
open.
And it will create a society, and people who are embracing the Bitcoin world and the Bitcoin and the digital society that goes around will be free and powerful as individuals, and then they can create companies and they can create businesses, and those will be, hopefully, I hope, more powerful than what we know today.
Very interesting. So that's the 10, 20 years outlook.
Generations. It's generation, because you have to account with education, because the people who will fulfill who will be able to express this power as much as they can is not our generation. It's people who've been living into it, and as kids have seen this. Maybe my kids, your kids, maybe in 1 or 2 generations we will really see that. It's like a boom.
But right now I feel like we're on a different level. Like there are some people who are looking 10, 20 years into the future and have these visions and understand these visions, but there are a lot of them now who just first heard about Bitcoin and think, okay, this might be a very interesting thing to invest in. Maybe the main purpose of Bitcoin now is basically as an emerging store of value, where people think there's some value in investing in it, because in 10 years it's going to be more valuable because all these features, because it's like digital gold, because it gives monetary freedom to people and stuff like that. So for them right now, I think there are other challenges. There are the biggest challenge is really to get into Bitcoin, to make their first buy, buy for 10 or 20 or 30 euro some Bitcoin. And I'm still struck with how hard it still is to buy, and that's why we started Relai. Right? We just really want to make buying and selling Bitcoin very easily. So from the traditional financial system, you have a bank. Everybody almost has a bank in our world, and then from coming from this traditional money, fiat money, into this decentralized money it shouldn't be that hard of a step, but it still is. It's still very hard. So what are the most important factors? How can we make this easier?
So you have, of course, you can reduce friction. Reduce friction, the number of steps that the person has to go to in order to get some Bitcoins. But the problem is that when we do this, some services are able to reduce friction to a level which is almost laughable, or a great level, let's say. But in reality, sometimes you don't have a real service behind, or you don't have the service that you expect. If you buy, still today, if you buy Bitcoins on Revolut, in reality, it is super easy. You can just have a balance in Bitcoin, and you're happy you have your Bitcoins. But in reality, you don't own them.
Revolut owns them.
Yeah, Revolut owns them, and you didn't do anything. You didn't touch a wallet. You just have a balance in Bitcoin, and you believe that you have one. So a lot of the when people are working on making Bitcoin super accessible, in reality, these companies are taking shortcuts, which make people believe they have Bitcoins, but in reality they don't control them the way they should, or that we as a Bitcoin community, we think they should, like own your own keys, own your private keys. So and then so it comes down to education and experiment. The masses have to be taught how to manage a decentralized money, and that's the hardest part. And this is great about Relai, because Relai is a wallet where you have your keys, so you manage your own keys, and then from there we keep that premise, which is strong, and then from there we try to make it easy for people, and there's a lot of projects which I think they are helping Bitcoin as a brand, because they are bringing, yesterday PayPal said they were going to allow people to buy and sell Bitcoin. Again, they are helping the brand, but they're not educating the people. They're just allowing people to have a balance in Bitcoin. But those people have no clue that you need keys around that. So there's, I think that's the challenge is much more harder than just making a lean, a fast process. You know, if you have a super UX where people think, I have Bitcoin in 2 seconds. In reality, where we have to be careful is sometimes the shortcuts that are taken are too strong.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, you can build a tool that makes it, the process is very easy and stuff, and and then you can make it, non-custodial or custodial or whatever. And so we, for example, now have decided to make it non-custodial. So and it's still very easy to get Bitcoin, but then it's even so the tool is one thing. The tool is relatively easy to set up and to build, but then the more important thing is the education and the support, so that people also get into this community, because it doesn't help them anything if they just have Bitcoin and don't understand it, or they don't know what they can do with it, or what the big vision behind it. So you need to kind of you need to get them into the community and talking to these people who are already in the space, and that's also where we focus a lot on.
There is another aspect which is important, is that we need to bring the right. If we bring the right tool and in the spirit of the crypto, in the spirit of Bitcoin, then usually we will find it will create a good. It will find its way. For example, in Switzerland, you have several networks of Bitcoin ATMs. The technology is very simple. You put cash in, you get a paper wallet with Bitcoin out. We don't teach people. We don't analyze who those people are. We don't know who they are, but we see that there's a market, and it's a market which where Bitcoins are flowing seeming very easily. The access is there is enough machines around Switzerland that certain type of activities can use those machines, and it's accessible for them. Okay. So by placing the good product at the right place, putting Bitcoin ATMs which are working simply according to the Bitcoin systems, by providing a wallet with simple DCA, by giving people ways to pay in restaurants, for example, with Bitcoin. I mean, all these simple tools, eventually, then if Bitcoin has a natural advantage in these cases, people will use them. For example, we had this case in Switzerland where people were using or are using Bitcoin to create companies, to capitalize companies. It's a very weird use. We didn't thought that it was going to be a use for that. But Bitcoin found its way in there, and now it's a common way to create a company. You put Bitcoins on the table and you show this to the business registry, and it's easier because you don't have to go to the bank, and the bank might say, no, we don't like your project. So it's really also about just giving the option of people to find giving the option to Bitcoin to find the places where it strives, where it has a good use, and we see that happening. So it's not a matter of sometimes going and educating people or it's just a matter of like saying Bitcoin is available here for you and here for you. Just see what is, and if we see a good usage, we can try to adapt Bitcoin or adapt the services around Bitcoin for that.
Yeah, because you can use it for a lot of different things, and it's a good tool and a good problem solver for a lot of use cases, a lot of problems.
So to recap on that question, making it easier for people to buy and sell Bitcoin is sometimes just comes down sometimes just to get the right service or the right way Bitcoin is provided in a certain environment, which is useful and people find it natural to use there, and it is more powerful than traditional money, and they will naturally use it and do the right thing.
Yeah. And still, I think for everyday people, it's not that easy. So that's also what you see on Google Trends, Google search, what people are typing in as like, search is still like one of the number one, and it's actually, I think, the number one term that people search, or the sentence is, where can I buy Bitcoin? In Switzerland, in Europe, in wherever. But it's just really, where can they buy Bitcoin? It's if we look at the European market, what different ways, and I mean, I'm not talking about brands or service providers concretely, but what different ways are there to buy Bitcoin? Now, you already said, okay, there's, for example, Bitcoin ATM, which you can do. Then there's some apps, there's some, what is
that? So, okay, Bitcoin ATMs, e-commerce cash. There is online, you can usually either wire money from your bank account or pay with credit cards. Then you can go to, you have a system where you can have some redeem cards. You buy those gift cards, like 50 euros gift cards, and you can swap them into Bitcoin. And I don't know. I think we shouldn't. The way to get Bitcoin, we shouldn't forget the second largest way of getting Bitcoin is actually to be paid in Bitcoin. So you can buy Bitcoin, that's for sure, but being paid in Bitcoin to get some Bitcoin is another way. So being paid is like working for Bitcoin, having your salary partially paid in Bitcoin, and a lot of people in Switzerland do that already. Or you can sell your product, whatever service or product, in Bitcoin, and this is where invoicing in Bitcoin is booming, especially in the computer industry in general, the IT industry. People are really using Bitcoin invoices more and more, and some other cryptos. But yes, so I think these are the largest way that we see being used. There were some crazy cases. It was funny. I remember there was a good project which I think is still on, which was allowing you to buy on Amazon in Bitcoin, and it actually was trying to find middlemen between. So someone was want to buy Bitcoin, and the other one had Bitcoin, wants to buy on Amazon with Bitcoin. So you were actually. I tried it once. I was buying things on Amazon for other people, and I was getting Bitcoin for it.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
It's kind of weird. If you go to places like then depending on the platform, you can go to centralized system, financial intermediaries. You can go to places like local Bitcoins or Hodorodo or BISC, whatever is decentralized system. But at the end, it's always either cash or bank wire or card or some other type of things which have monetary value, like gift cards or things like this.
So in the end, there are thousands of different. There are many ways how to buy Bitcoin. It's just a matter of what is your priority. Do you want it very convenient?
Yeah.
Do you want it very private, like in the decentralized decentralized way? Do you want it with not so much responsibility on you? Then you go to a financial intermediary that holds the money for you, and then it's very easy, it's very convenient, but then you don't get the control out of the money. So it really depends on what user type you are, and then you will find the right solution.
And even as one user, you will use different ways, and it's normal that you already see all the financial services that exist right now. They're so diverse, and they're so diverse not because we need all of them, but every person is in a situation where some of these services are always adapted to him. And I mean, myself, I buy Bitcoins in different ways, or sometimes I sell them in different ways, because it depends on what I'm doing right at that moment. If you are saving, for example, if you're buying Bitcoin for saving, usually it makes much sense to buy it through a bank wire, for example. If I just need quickly Bitcoin for giving it, if I would give a bit of Bitcoin as a gift for my nephew and buy $20, maybe I would do it by credit card. So depending on how you're going to use the Bitcoin, the way you're going to acquire them might be different.
So with all these different service providers and wallets all around Europe, from a legal perspective, what is there to be looked at? So, for example, there was a question on Twitter from our Twitter communities: do wallet providers, for example, need a license at some point? And in which jurisdictions, in which countries do they have to have a license, in which maybe not? In which cases do wallets have to have a license, in which not? Because, for example, I can only talk about Relai. In our setup, we don't have any requirement for a license, which is obviously great because it's easier to internationalize, because we don't have to have, for all these countries that we're active in, there are more than 20 countries in Europe, we don't have to have a license per every country, right? And so, and also obviously for all we don't have to hire a lot of lawyers to be legal and compliant, everything. So it's great, we don't have to have a license, but there's a lot of service providers that need to have a license. So what can you talk about the different levels here in different jurisdictions?
It's hard because the wallet provider is really the most the wallet provider is what is touching the user. Is the software that you give to the user and which gives the user the ability to use his own key, and it's where the most powerful things happen, is where the signature is happening. And this is completely out of control now of the regulators and of financial intermediaries. And the thing is that the reality is that these softwares are provided by software companies. It's just a software company. You don't control any of the funds. You just provide this software, and a lot of times also these softwares are open source. So the regulator, they don't know how to treat them right now. There's no consensus on how to treat wallet providers. If we just apply most of the rules in the world today, wallet providers should not be regulated because they don't touch the money and they just give them a software. No, that's it. Now, like I said before, one of the things that is going to happen is that because the regulation, because the money control will be more in the hands of the individuals, the regulation is going to try to go more towards the individuals to control everything. So there is a tendency from people from time to time to say, oh, but what about wallets? We should start regulate wallets. So you see that happening, and some countries take position in there. It's a bit hard to see how it's going to go. But for example, in Switzerland, there is already one push which is interesting, a bit worrisome, where they say wallet providers that assist into making transactions, other financial transactions, should be also regulated. So it doesn't concern wallets like Relai, because Relai is just a full non-custodial wallet, so it's okay. But if you have a multi-sig system, or if you are in a connection with a smart contract like Argent, for example, all these kind of wallets and which are connected to DEXs and things like this, where at one point the wallet provider could help you doing the transaction, but not really touching your key either, or having some of the keys. They're thinking of maybe they should be financial intermediary, and I think it's a really bad direction. We should try to fight, because then the next step would be to say also non-custodial wallets are going to be regulated too, and then we have everything, any software that touches Bitcoin should be regulated, and we're not going to go there. It's going to be a fight. That's the problem with regulation, is that in reality, regulation is only touching 1% of what it's trying to cover, and regulations today are not efficient at all. So we might move into a world where you have a bunch of regulation and then the reality of the market is somewhere else, and they try to regulate something which doesn't exist anymore. So that's a bit the problem. So currently, that's the situation. The current situation is not clear for wallets. It might evolve, and it will all depend on the fear factor of the regulators.
And also, I feel like in all the different continents and all the different countries, and even within countries and different cities or different jurisdictions or sectors, it's all different. Like every regulator sees it a little bit differently. So it's I think this is still going to take years, if not decades, to really have legal clarity. But in the meantime, so much innovation in this whole fintech, finance, Bitcoin, and from a technological point of view and stuff, so much innovation will happen that it's not even, it's so hard, you can't even regulate this.
You won't have clarity ever in reality, because why do you have so many different approaches around the world? Is because this is cultural. I mean, our world, our physical world is quite big, has lots of different legal systems and different cultures. But the problem is that Bitcoin is unique. And so everyone will have a different view about Bitcoin, and they will try to do different things, but Bitcoin will just continue its way in a globalized world and just says fuck you to all those regulations. It's Bitcoin is there, and it's the regulation that has to go around, and they won't be able to change how Bitcoin is working. So that's never going. I don't think we will never ever get clarity. Maybe exceptionally, maybe hopefully, I think maybe Switzerland could be a place. It's not fully clear, because there's the regulator always goes into non-clear direction. I hope we will keep the clarity that we have right now in Switzerland. But I see that. I think that in the next 10 years, it is really possible that Switzerland would be one of the few countries where there is some clarity about Bitcoin for entrepreneurs and people who want to use it and everything.
Amazing. That's so interesting. I think the legal aspect of it, the legal development, is such an interesting thing, and I'm very glad to have you as kind of a guiding light there. And you really did a lot in terms of also educating the regulators and shaping, even shaping the law and the regulations that apply, and shaping how the government in Switzerland, maybe even in whole Europe, look at these things, and then which is favorable for innovation for the community and stuff. So that's very, very important. And when you say before, I think you said like something like, we can fight this. We can in Switzerland, we have the choice to, if we are not in line with some regulations, and we can fight this. We theoretically we can. It's like you can theoretically look at the Bitcoin code and fight it if you don't like it, but in reality it's like 0.1% of the people who can do that, because there are software developers, they can read code, and same thing with regulations. Theoretically everybody can say something, but like 99% of people don't understand what's going on in the legal world. That's why it's so important to have guys like you who fighting for this. That's amazing. Cool. Yeah. Last but not least, our favorite, most favorite question. Would also ask you, how much of your total funds do you hold in Bitcoin? Like, if you want to disclose that, when it comes to percentage wise.
I think it's very first, but I think I must be around half. I think half of my. I mean, I don't have a huge wealth. But half in crypto. Yes, I would say.
Still, which shows your commitment to.
So it can really evolve, because there is also I'm also a shareholder of some companies, but it can evolve. But one thing is sure is that I see crypto as my pension. And so I know that in the the more I will go in the age and towards my pension, the more this the amount of Bitcoin will be. I mean, based the proportion will be bigger. I mean, it will just grow again. I think so.
Okay.
Yes, because I don't expect any reasonable pension from the traditional system.
Okay, that's a great word for the end. Thank you very much, Alexis, for visiting us again, and talk to you soon. Thank you very much.